It has finally happened. Supposedly, we got the full disclosure and dropping of the Epstein files. It's all out there for us to see now. But the dropping of these Epstein files has been quite the shit show. For those that don't know, it was agreed upon by a House Oversight Committee that they would hold a vote to pass a bill that would require the Trump administration and Trump's DOJ primarily to release everything they have on Epstein, everything the FBI gathered, all of that to the public by, I think it was like 3 days ago now is when the deadline was. And if they didn't release it all, they would be in violation of the law. The DOJ would be breaking the law. Now, there was one stipulation. This was that any evidence or information that the release of could potentially jeopardize an active investigation would be redacted, not included, and that obviously certain things like the faces of victims and whatnot would not be shown, right? Like, that's reasonable. No one wants to blast the identities of Epstein and his cohort's victims out there. That's not the point of getting justice. However, the amount of things that were redacted were exactly what was expected. I remember I said something like, we're gonna get the Epstein files, it'll look like a barcode, I think is what I said. And oh my god, I was actually wrong. It's worse than that. There are pages of the Epstein files that are completely redacted. Not just redacting names or certain references, but just fully redacted pages, fully redacted images. Redacting the images fully makes us very concerned as to what might be on there. Now here's the thing about this. You might think of redacting and think of the SCP fan wiki, where when something's redacted, it's redacted. You can't see it, right? Well, it turns out the DOJ is less competent than the SCP wiki. And the way that they tried to redact things in their massive Epstein file dump was not exactly ironclad. In fact, you could just do what you're about to see here in order to get around it.
I'm at justice.gov where all the Epstein files are being held, and there's a lot of different files that have been redacted. So you can go ahead and scroll down till you get to a redacted area. Here's a redacted area right here. Guess what? If you want to look at these files, all you got to do is copy it and paste it into Microsoft Word.
I think they patched this.
All the files are unredacted. There it is. So go back to justice.org, find all those files, and start unredacting before they figure out how to stop you.
Yeah, that was an L. That was a pretty big L. Now, there have been some areas where people have been somewhat sensationalist. So, for instance, there was a lot of discussion about the fake AI-generated YouTube video that was supposedly of Epstein attempting suicide in his cell that was included in these files. And to be fair, they did disclose that much of what would be in the files is blatantly untrue hearsay. And the reason for that is that the FBI gathered everything of relevance. Even random AI-generated YouTube videos that claimed to be the real leaked footage were gathered and investigated by the FBI. And once something's investigated, like, for any amount of relevance, I mean, you want that included in the Epstein files, no matter how seemingly insignificant and jokey it is. It's like they looked at a lot of stuff, obviously, and so there is some crazy stuff that's included, and that also includes, mind you, that fake Epstein suicide attempt video that isn't real at all. But yeah, that was also a bit of a PR fumble, to say the least. To be fair, I don't think that was necessarily them maliciously misrepresenting. I think that's just a really funny example of how people are now not happy with the Trump administration, and every attempt to explain themselves around the Epstein files is just blowing back in their faces now. They have absolutely no way of turning this into a W. At this point, I've seen conservatives trying to argue that Epstein wasn't actually that bad. That's where they've gotten to at this point. It gets even crazier as well. So much stuff has come out from the Epstein files stuff. For one, there's been some images. I imagine we'll see some of them in a couple of the videos I have to show you here. Many of them, or some of them, include Trump with clearly underage girls. Not in explicit situations, mind you, but definitely in creepy ones, suggestive ones, you could even call it. And that was definitely wild. I saw a lot of people freaking out about that online, so it seems like the Trump is a pedophile allegations have gone beyond allegations at this point for most people. They seem to be treating it as solidified fact, and that is just beautiful to me. I love to see people taking that dose of reality. That said, though, the response has been wild, because over the course of days, more keeps leaking, which reveals they did not in fact drop everything. Crazy details of the story, like the fact that Virginia Giuffre was set up to have sex with the, at the time, Prime Minister of Israel, and that the Prime Minister of Israel and Jeffrey Epstein were good friends, and that there was a lot of claims that Jeffrey Epstein might have ties to some kind of national intelligence, maybe Israel's national intelligence. Those claims and conspiracies have garnered more evidence to back them up since these Epstein file drops. There's so much to talk about. I can't even give you a summary. Yeah, Ehud Barak, not Netanyahu, mind you. Yeah, so there's so much to go through here. I can't even begin to try and summarize it without us going into it in a more condensed and organized fashion. There was a letter, what was the letter to Nasser, I think his name was, that Epstein wrote, another convicted pedophile, so that kind of suggests there might have been a bit of a ring, that it wasn't just Epstein's pedophilia ring with Ghislaine Maxwell, it could have been several equivalent pedophilia rings. Yeah, Larry Nasser. You know, the connection is definitely worrying, that there could be something way bigger than Epstein going on, which is what I think most people suspect as well. But listen, if you want to learn about all this, stick around, leave a like on this video so YouTube has a harder time suppressing it, because it'll get a boost in the algorithm ideally. Comment down below whatever you like to help boost it as well. Subscribe if you want to see more, join my Discord, and let's get right into it, shall we? Hopefully you'll enjoy. Give us the info, CoffeeZilla.
Epstein File Transparency Day is here, thanks to legislation which forced the government to finally release the Epstein files. Is it going to be Republicans, Democrats? Who is on that island?
Everybody.
All the documents they released. But first, we have a little word from Todd Blanche, our Deputy Attorney General.
So yes, so today is the 30 days, and I expect that we're going to release several 100,000 documents today, and then over the next couple weeks, I expect.
I'm gonna tell you guys something. Call this bigoted, but if I see a rich old person, I just instantly assume they're a pedophile, because better safe than sorry. But also, like, my opinion that they're probably a pedophile is not gonna hurt them. They're rich and old, okay? Like it's not that big a deal. But man, not gonna lie, those old rich bastards, more often than not, they end up being creepers.
Several 100,000 more. There's a lot of eyes looking at these, and we want to make sure that when we do produce the materials we're producing, that we're protecting every single victim.
Wait, so turns out, first of all, the files that got released today, they aren't actually all the files, even though by law they should have been. So yeah, the first thing...
Everything had to be released. They could redact things that were not... that, you know, they thought should not be released because maybe it could interfere with an investigation or harm the privacy of the victims, but they outright left out files that were gathered by or produced by the FBI and gathered and archived by the DOJ.
You need to know about these files is that they are not all the files, and we have no idea which ones they held back and are going to release later. And the second thing I want to tell you about are the redactions that are made. This is one of the most prominent things when you look at these files. You'll see there are a lot of just blacked out stuff. And look, sometimes that makes sense, right? If you say, look, we are redacting a victim's face, like, totally get that, and clearly that happened in some instances. You know,
no one has an issue with that.
Scanned. Totally get that. I'm all about that, and I actually agree with the government. However, remember...
I will say, that's an outright confirmation that the Epstein files contain CSAM, so... there's some kind of imagery of a prominent, probably prominent, famous, wealthy, powerful adult man with underage kids that would be considered CSAM that they did not include. But that basically confirms something like that is in the files. If they outright say, we didn't scan those things, because obviously producing it would be a crime. Which, you know, can't blame them for that. But you can't expect the government to commit a crime, right? You don't want to expect the government to do that.
That Jason Leopold reported that sometimes what they were calling the Epstein Transparency Project, they also were calling the Special Redaction Project, meaning some people did not like being in there. And you kind of see that reflected in some of the redaction choices, because some of these redactions just don't seem to make sense. And this is what they've already released. Remember, there's files we just don't know about because they haven't.
Well, remember, a lot of the files stuff, like this right here, is a news article. Like, a lot of the files are actually anything of relevance they could find online that got any kind of traction. Like, a big part of why the files are so big and there's so much in it is there's nonsense fluff in there. And I don't think they filled it with fluff to, like, hide things or make it look more substantial. I think that the FBI did actually look at all this stuff, and the FBI probably looked at millions of different things, and everything they looked at got archived as part of the investigation. And now we're looking at all that, and we're like, why the fuck is there a BBC article in the Epstein files?
And this is what they've already released. Remember,
but it also means that, like, if some big poster made an allegation that insert celebrity is in the Epstein files, and then they included that in there, that, like, somebody said this, then that would presume that that person with no evidence is just included in the Epstein files, despite there being no connection to Epstein. And I could see some people being validly angry about that.
There's files we just don't know about because they haven't actually released the full files yet. They've released some of them. But for example, the BBC reported that a judge ruled that Ghislaine Maxwell's grand jury records can be unsealed. So, you know, all of us were wondering, okay, where are those? Well, they're redacted. Actually, 119 pages of some of these files were just, like, redacted fully. Like, you couldn't see anything in these files. There's literally no details except it just says Grand Jury New York, and it's just like pages and pages of redaction. I mean, you can't see anything. This is part of the Transparency Act. So that is a weird look, but other redactions are also really strange. For example, we have this message among the documents where it seems to be Jeffrey Epstein getting a message that says, I have a female for him. It's like a note. Somebody left him a note, and they say, please call. I can't tell if that's her or him, but twice he gets a message, and both times it's a message that says, I have a female for him, but they redact.
Zan, what's disgusting about it is that the FBI knew there were conspirators but did nothing about it, meaning they may have been actively collaborating in the trafficking themselves by covering them up. What's so wild is, like, either the FBI is exactly as evil and crazy as everybody online says, or they're really lazy and incompetent. And that lazy and incompetence leads to the perception of being way more sinister and conniving than they actually are. Because the FBI, like look at like the assassination of Kennedy, for instance, right? The FBI was surveilling the guy who did it for months. You know, like, he had there were agents at the FBI investigating him and stalking him and shadowing him for unrelated reasons to any suspicion he might try to commit a political assassination. And they should have been able to figure out that he was planning to assassinate the president at the time. And I think there was evidence that they did have some kind of indication and did nothing about it. Yeah, like the FBI either has a reputation that suggests that it is evil and has covered up and colluded with some really bad scandals in the past, or they're so incompetent that the only reason for these patterns that make sense to people is malice, when in reality it's just incompetent bureaucracy, which could also be just as likely, but I don't know. Then again, the FBI did almost... Who was that one guy who was like a whistleblower that was... The FBI's conclusion was he killed himself by shooting himself in the back of the head twice? That was like the iconic one that like everybody is like, okay, yeah, that the FBI killed that guy. No one with a straight face can say that didn't happen. Who was it? Comey? Yeah, he was the whistleblower guy. I forget his name.
The person who called which kind of doesn't make sense. Like, isn't that someone you should be investigating? How is that a victim? Maybe there's context that we're missing, but I want to remind you guys that there was supposed to be an explanation for even why they were making certain redactions, and they didn't. Here's one of our legislators talking about that.
And our law requires them to explain redactions. There's not a single explanation for why that entire document was redacted.
So yeah, already Transparency Day was looking a bit shaky. But let me just say, there are some things worth looking at. So one of the big things that was interesting is that Bill Clinton was heavily featured in this whole thing. There's Bill in the hot tub with some...
The Gooners on Twitter... The Gooners on Twitter were being insane about the Epstein files. There was a picture of Ghislaine Maxwell skinny dipping in a pool, and... they censored Ghislaine Maxwell. They redacted, censored, whatever you want to call it. Ghislaine Maxwell's breasts, obviously, because of course they did. That's what you do. But all of the comments on this one Twitter post were, "Come on, was it really necessary to censor that?" And honestly, to be fair, they didn't censor Bill Clinton's titties. Imagine if they did, though. That would have been really funny.
A lady that is redacted, and Ghislaine Maxwell. This appears to be on one of his trips early on.
Different.
I think it's pretty obvious why Billy Boy is so prominently featured. Like, he's obviously was associated with Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, yeah.
He's a big name. He's kind of a scalp, if you will, and he gives some...
Everybody's pretty much settled now on the conspiracy that Donald Trump and Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton probably essayed and ate children together. So, nobody, especially on the left, is, defending Bill Clinton because he was, a prominent Democrat, 2 decades ago nearly now. We're getting on, about 2 decades ago. And no one's defending Bill Clinton. No one on the left is. The narrative is very much Trump and Bill Clinton are pedophiles together, which is not a narrative that the right has any response to. Or I should say the right that is defending Trump. I shouldn't even say the right, because to characterize the right as defending Trump right now would actually be misrepresentative. The right is really not defending Trump these days. To the point where I don't think it's appropriate to refer to the right and MAGA in America as one amorphous blob anymore. Not culturally and not as a voter bloc and not electorally or anything like that. The amount of fall off for Trump support has been so big.
Public something to think about. And the White House was trying to seize on that, obviously. Bill Clinton just chilling without a care in the world. Little did he know. And you have Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, saying, "Oh my." But ultimately, this leaves a giant elephant in the room for them that still doesn't make sense, which is this. You guys don't care about Bill Clinton. Why haven't these files been released before? Why has there been such a cover-up of the Epstein files if Bill was the only guy in it? Right? Because let me spoil the surprise. Because while Billy Boy is featured multiple times with multiple women on the plane in hot tubs, Trump is barely featured at all. The only pictures of Trump are some desk photos. He's not even in the picture. It's just thin. There's basically nothing relating to Trump that is that interesting. And people's point is well, that's a little weird, right? We know that they were all kind of involved.
Here's the thing. It's suspiciously little about Trump. You know what I mean? Everyone expected that Trump had to come up at least a few times in the files, and not that that would be outright evidence that he was a pedophile, but that, he had to come up a bit because he was so close to Epstein during the time of a lot of this crime that, Epstein then proceeded to go to Donald Trump's gala on this date. We expect his name to be brought up. Not, it's gotta get brought up. But the fact that it's practically never brought up, not even some in passing, Epstein would then be reported as having gone to this Trump event or gone to Trump's Mar-a-Lago on this date. Nothing like that got included, which is super fucking sus. The 90s was 3 decades ago. Don't make me feel old, Delancey. Don't remind me of that. The 90s was 20 years ago. Thank you very much.
We know Trump and Epstein were, heavily associated together. Not saying there's some smoking gun or anything like that. I don't have any special information on that. But we know there are going to be files related to this. Like, it's obvious. We already have leaked reporting that they had him in the files multiple times. So it's like, where are they? And that's going to leave a lot of people unsatisfied because...
And what's interesting about this, let me see if I can find it. I might have bookmarked it on Twitter, maybe? Let me see if I can find this clip of the journalist interviewing the guy who had worked behind the scenes. Did I not bookmark it? I'm such a fool. I'm such a fool for that. I think it might be included in this video that I did include, though. I think it might be in this one. Maybe. Yeah, it is. Okay. Never mind. I have the clip on hand. But it is in this video by a channel called Keith Edwards, called The FBI Forgot to Redact This. And this actually goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about, which is how suspiciously few references to Trump there are in the redacted Epstein files. Keyword redacted Epstein files.
Fallout from the Epstein file release is continuing, and publications are noticing that there is suspiciously zero Trump-related content in these files. At least the files that we can see, it was heavily redacted, which is...
They did forget to redact some things, though. Like, there was the photos in the desk of the pictures of Trump and Epstein and Ghislaine that we just saw earlier. Like, there were some things that they forgot to redact Trump out of. Like, Trump was clearly in the files so much, they missed a few. Where, like, a photo of Trump and Ghislaine on a Polaroid is, like, sitting on a desk in the background.
Against the law and against the spirit of the law. And there is one file, though, that they forgot to redact, and it involves Donald Trump and a 14-year-old girl. Now, we actually knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because there was an undercover journalist that exposed the acting deputy chief.
I covered this at the time when this video came out that we're about to see. This is what I was just looking for a minute ago. This clip has been fully confirmed. I think this guy, based on what we've now seen and what we now know, he did not lie.
Joseph Schnitt on what they were planning to do with the Epstein files. And tell me if this sounds like exactly what has happened.
Well, those files do exist.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of pages of files. They'll redact every Republican or conservative person in those files, leave all the liberal, democratic people in those files.
So, I mean, that doesn't get more clear than that. They'll redact every Republican or conservative person in those files and leave the liberal democratic people in those files. Well, that looks to be exactly what has happened. And I actually have comment from Bill Clinton, who is heavily featured in these files. And here's what he had to say. Bill Clinton says this. He said, the White House hasn't been hiding these files for months only to dump them late on a Friday to protect Bill Clinton. This is about shielding themselves from what comes next or from what they'll try and hide forever, so they can release as many grainy 20-plus-year-old photos as they want. But this isn't about Bill Clinton, never has, never will be. Even Susie Wiles said Donald Trump was wrong about Bill Clinton. There are two types of people here. The first group knew nothing and cut Epstein off before his crimes came to light. The second group continued relationships with him after.
That includes Trump. We know for a fact, confirmed by numerous evidence leaks, that Trump continued his friendship with Epstein and met with him even after he was publicly known to be doing this stuff. Well after, like only a few years before he died, I think. Like, Trump and Epstein were meeting up. And well after their falling out. Like, Trump and Epstein's falling out, their famous early 2000s falling out, was not a permanent breakup. They became friends again and literally hung out shortly before Epstein was incarcerated and died.
The first, no amount of stalling by people in the second group will change that. Everyone, especially MAGA, expects answers, not scapegoats. So
True.
I'm really going to say this. I don't care if it's a liberal, progressive, moderate, Republican, MAGA in those files. Everyone in those files who has done something wrong to children needs to be properly prosecuted and needs to face justice. My issue is the incongruency between how there really are a lot of liberal faces in these files, and I can't think of one conservative that were released.
The fucked part too is it's not like half the pedophiles in the Epstein files have been covered for, because we all know that Republicans were not just half of Epstein's clients and co-conspirators. We know for a fact it was not 50-50 Republicans and Democrats. It was definitely leaning heavier on Republican, because when we're talking about wealthy, like powerful people who are older and like into finance, hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, they are statistically far more likely to be Republicans or conservatives, just based on their age, their wealth, all these things. So you know that most of the Epstein cohorts were not included in here because most of them were probably Republicans, just by sheer likelihood, you know? Like, you're filtering for a demographic that is mostly Republicans when it comes to, like, anybody who would be close with Epstein.
At least the document dump we got yesterday. And I don't know if Bill Clinton was aware of what Epstein was doing prior to it becoming public. I would have to guess that he probably had a hint of what was going on. I don't know if
I think he definitely did. Bill Clinton, I don't know, Bill Clinton just, he's too skeezy to not, like, I don't know, man. Like, he's too skeezy. He's, I'm pretty sure it's, like, solidified that he raped, I'm forgetting her name right now. She probably wouldn't want me to reference her name in this context. She wants to be known for more than that anyway, so. But yeah, like, he's a rapist who in doing so cheated on his wife, who they both have, like, huge political careers, and, like, Bill Clinton not only betrayed his wife in their marriage, but also, like, jeopardized her hard-earned political career by, you know, dragging her name through the mud. It's like, man, like, Bill Clinton is such a piece of shit. Yeah, it's really hard to, I don't know, like, there's really no, like, on a character level, there's no defense for Bill Clinton. He's a massive piece of shit, genuinely. But he's irrelevant these days, sure, but, like, yeah, obviously. Fuck Bill Clinton.
If he did anything illegal, but I can't imagine that stuff like rumors like that probably get around. So if he wasn't for sure, he probably heard of something. Now, Jake Tapper actually made this point where he pulled out his phone and showed how many redactions there are.
Talk about blacking out. I don't know if I can get a close-up.
Yeah,
of
Monica
my
Lewinsky,
phone.
thank you.
This is one of the documents that the Justice Department released. It's 100 pages.
Right.
This is what it looks like. I don't know if you can see. It's all black. It's just 100 pages of redaction.
It's ludicrous.
I love that you could see the reporter is angry. Like, the reporter was invested in this shit, and he's like you can tell he's trying not to crash out.
Why even release them? It's ludicrous.
Like all of us.
AOC said this: now the cover-up is out in the open. This is far from over. Everyone involved will have to answer for this. Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, whole administration.
Oh.
I love this part.
I hope.
We need more of this energy. Protecting a bunch of rapists and pedophiles because they have money, power, and connections. Bondi should resign tonight. I agree. And if she doesn't resign, you know what we can actually do? Believe it or not.
Republicans don't even like Pam Bondi anymore, and it's so fucking funny. The Never Trump Republican movement is really starting to get steam again. Like, the Republicans who are now, like, anti-Trumpers, like anti-Trump Republicans or Never Trump Republicans, which are a real demographic. They're small and a minority of the Republicans, but they've been around since Trump entered politics. Republicans who have avoided voting or voted independent ever since Trump became the Republican Party's favorite. And no matter what, they'll never vote for Trump. They're Republicans, but they'll never vote for him. And that group is growing, like, quickly.
What Congress can do, they can impeach these people. They can actually have them go on trial, and they can vote them out. I don't know why that's such a that's a bridge too far to cross. Like, they did the same fucking thing to George Santos.
Republican majority in Congress. Also, is it just the president that needs to be impeached by the Senate as well? Like, can like someone like Pam Bondi just be impeached by the House and easy peasy lemon squeezy? Because I feel like that's way more achievable even under a Republican majority. Because there's a lot of Republicans that don't want to come off as sweeping for the Epstein files. So if you're trying to hold a vote to impeach in the House, I think it's easier to get Republicans on board with anything that they can virtue signal Epstein file stuff with right now. Who knows? They might go through with it. Executive branch needs both the House and Senate to approve. That makes sense. Okay.
For a lot less. So maybe we should just have a trial. Maybe we should put all of these crooks on trial. I know impeachment isn't a criminal trial, but still. We can at least have a political trial and try to get these people out of power.
Is it not? I thought it kind of is, right? Because the House determines, like, impeachment, then it goes on to the Senate, but doesn't the Senate come to a conclusion that a crime has been committed and basically convict? But is the conviction not a criminal conviction? It's just a federal, like a legal move to remove power from the sitting executive? I need to research that. I'm curious. Some interesting process. There's not been many impeachments in our history to go off of.
Now, Caitlin Collins talked to Ro Khanna, and then I'll show you this unredacted story with Donald Trump.
Judicial branch needs us both too. Oh, that's such bullshit, man. That's such bullshit. They're lifetime appointees. You can't have to require the House and Senate to impeach people in the judicial branch, bro. Like, Supreme Court justices have a lifetime appointment. You got to make it easier to remove them from their position democratically.
We're actually in this morning talking, and we said, look, we're willing to give them some benefit of the doubt as long as the quality of the release is substantive. But what we found out is the most important documents are missing. They've had excessive redactions. And the central question that Americans want to know, who are the other rich and powerful men on the island raping these young girls or covering up, has not been answered.
So those two documents that you were told by the survivors' attorneys that are the most important, the indictment that came out before Jeffrey Epstein got a sweetheart deal and an 82-page memo backing up why he should be charged, neither of those are in this release tonight.
Neither of them are in the release, and to the extent the drafter's intent of a law...
It should not surprise you in the slightest, especially because more has leaked since Epstein file day. They broke the law. They hid a lot. They released a lot, but there was a lot they didn't release. And now everybody knows it. And the fact that they didn't give us everything, which is an undeniable fact, is more suspicious than anything else. I was of the belief that if they find a way to wiggle out of releasing the Epstein files, it would be worse than if they released them and Trump was plastered all over them. Because if it's just the Trump administration trying to relentlessly cover up the files, not only does that kind of Streisand affect the topic in general into being far more relevant and something people are paying attention to, but when you leave it up to people's imagination, they're going to come up with the most horrific imaginable conclusions as to why Trump's administration doesn't want the files getting out. Like, I genuinely thought that, like, if they hide stuff, it's worse than if they don't, and they hid stuff. Worse for them.
Thomas Massie and I explicitly drafted it to cover those two documents. And you had 3 federal judges look at our law and say, release everything in terms of the grand jury. You had judges saying release it, and then the Department of Justice is redacting it. Now, I know what they're thinking. They think, okay, it's going to be Christmas, they're going to do this release, and people are going to move on. I would just remind them that's what they thought, that the Trump administration thought when they shut down Congress early before the August recess.
Yeah, this isn't...
That's also what they thought back in 2020, by the way. 2019, I think is when Epstein killed himself. Trump was president back then. And he would still be president for like a year and a half afterwards during all that investigating and all that. Like, Trump and his administration oversaw a lot of the investigation that these files came from initially. then Biden was in power for 4 years during, I'm sure, some of it, but I think the investigation was largely wound down by that point. So the Epstein Files investigation, the DOJ's gatherings and everything, that's mostly stuff that happened while Trump was in office in the first place, originally.
It's going to go away. They want it to go away. It's not going to go away. And there are so many documents that we know are missing. The thing is, the survivors actually know the names of the people on the Epstein list. They're just not allowed to say it.
Yeah, the survivors have been very wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey guys, you're right. This is not everything.
I don't fully understand why that is. One of you in the comments probably have a better sense of that, but I do know that they're not allowed to say the names. Maybe their fear of getting sued, or there's other fears of their danger, or perhaps legal.
They should do it anyway, and whatever prosecutor or whatever judge wants to go after them for it, wow, they would be gaining the ire of every American, pretty much.
They're not allowed to reveal that, but they do know what is in there, and they can very easily say, well, that person's name hasn't been released in those files. So they know when there's something being hidden. There is something being hidden. And I want to point out,
they unironically did that to a woman. I imagine whoever they is very unliked these days.
That Donald Trump, Sam Stein made this really good point. He said weeks
True apples,
yeah. / months to get the Epstein files ready for release. Couldn't do that. No timeline or need or legal reasoning to change the Kennedy Center facade. Done in hours. Such a great point.
True.
That there's lawlessness to make things happen when Donald Trump wants them, but when the law demands something of Trump, he either doesn't do it or he takes as long as possible and then doesn't actually give what the law asks of him. And apparently Donald Trump, when making this sign, Trump makes dumb mistake with Kennedy Center renaming. I was not surprised to learn this. Now, of all the things I get upset about, I think this is the one I'm just choosing to not go there.
This just seems silly.
Okay, fine. We can fucking, it's gonna be very cathartic.
Wait, the Donald Trump and the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the, okay. I'm guessing the two thes is the problem here.
When we win again, or when he's no longer in power, or when he's incapacitated from old age, whatever happens, it's going to be so cathartic when we see these letters being torn off the building. Don't you agree? I'm actually grateful. I'm grateful he's giving us a physical act to show that the Trump era is over. When we tear down the Ark, when we tear down the ballroom, when we pull off these letters, it'll be very cathartic. And I'm grateful he's giving us an opportunity to take an action.
It's the state that America is in under Trump, how much of a shit show this all is, how dysfunctional and abnormal it all is, could not be more perfectly summarized by all the images of the White House having its East Wing torn down for renovations to make the ballroom. Possible secret bunker, as some people have claimed as well. You can see the White House, the symbol of America, in many ways, has been mutilated and looks like it's just trashy, you know? Like, you see photos of the White House and a whole wing of it is ripped off and demolished, and there's a bunch of equipment outside and stuff, and soon they're going to be shipping in a ton of big piles and pallets of building material. It's just, it comes off as so trashy and dysfunctional, and there's just something so symbolic about it, you know? How he comes in thinking he knows better, but in reality, it's just nothing's of value's getting done, and things that weren't broken are being destroyed so they can be replaced with something probably worse, at best the same. It's so perfectly symbolic. Anyway, folks. There is so much more to talk about with this Epstein file stuff. This is not the end of the story by a long shot. I'll probably have to do 2 more segments minimum talking about the birth of stuff around this topic, but we've been going for 40 minutes now, so I'm going to end this one here, but keep an eye out if it interests you, and my future coverage of the Epstein files drops. Mind you, there's probably a lot of stuff in there that people haven't even found yet because they're busy sifting and unredacting things, and new stuff is leaking every day, so keep an eye out, folks. And hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and a comment down below. If you don't know what to say, you can say files, and it'll boost the video in the algorithm when you like and comment, so I appreciate it. If you say files, I'll also know that you watched all the way to the end. And of course, if you want to see more from me, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications, and join my fan Discord if you haven't already. With that said, thank you for watching, and as always, I hope to see you in the next video.